League of Women Voters of Crystal, New Hope, and East Plymouth. Oh, it's not on? Oh, okay. All right. So my job right now is just to introduce Jenny Hickman, who is our state and national person on our league, and she is going to introduce our speakers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. It's a good turnout, and we're very happy to have you here. Why bees now, you ask? This time of the year? Is it seed catalog time? What are avid gardeners doing now? Why is the league talking about bees at all? Why aren't they working on voting and redistricting? Why is the league spending time visiting the Taschen Bee and Pollinator Discovery Center at the Arboretum instead of heading to the Capitol for committee hearings on the usual topics that league focuses on? Well, we're doing those typical league things and even more. Now, why? At the last League of Women Voters State Convention, delegates voted to develop a briefing paper on the impact of neonicotinoid pesticides on honeybees. This paper is part of the League of Women Voters of Minnesota Natural Resources current position on protection and wise management of natural resources. The paper is written, and the co-chair of the committee is here tonight to talk to you. The title of the paper is appropriately The Impact of Neonicotinoids on Honeybees, and the co-author is Patricia Hauser, who is also a member of the South Tonka League of Women Voters. In addition to her stellar work on the State League Commission, she's co-founder of Humming for Bees, a grassroots, 100% volunteer nonprofit dedicated to contributing to a sustainable future for bees and other pollinators. And tonight she will tell you about the League's paper and also about her Humming for Bees organization and how you can team up with others to organize and promote her friendly activities to enhance bee habitats, promote decreasing the use of harmful pesticides. And here to give you the latest buzz on bees and more is Patricia Hauser. So please help me welcome her. Patricia.
Thank you, Ginny, for the lovely welcome, and welcome to all of you. I'm going to turn on my little clicker here. You've said some of the things that I'm going to say, and there's so much that I want to share tonight and probably have more than I can get in, so I might go faster on some slides than others, but we'll start right here. Humming for Bees, by the way, was started about 4 years ago. So I'll start a little bit more about us. We started about 4 years ago. The two people in the back room I'd like to introduce, Judy Chucker with the pink arm, and Jeff Dinsmore. Co-founders and charter members and key people here. And then we'll be talking a little bit about why bees are important, what's happening to bees and pollinators, and the paper that Ginny was referring to is this one. It's online, and there are little cards in the back table that can get you right to the website. We'll be talking a little bit about that. And then what you can do, and want to focus on that. Humming for Bees, as I said, started 4 years ago, and we had a two-part campaign. We had a campaign to start a Be Safe Yard sign, which we did, our little signs. We sold them for $10, and to people who sign a pledge, basically saying that they won't use systemic insecticides, including neonicotinoids, and that they'll plant bee-friendly flowers bees like, and keep learning about bees. So it's pretty simple. And the purpose of the sign is to get people's attention in the neighborhood so they can come up to you, because after tonight you'll all be experts. And I know you already brought a lot of information here, some of you. By the way, How many here are beekeepers? Please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 beekeepers. Welcome. So we have a nice group of people to answer questions when I get stuck. Anyway, so we have the signs so that people can come up and say, well, what is a bee safe yard? And then you can talk to them about bees. You can also refer them to our website, which is on the bottom of the sign there. And the other thing we did is we passed the first bee and pollinator resolution in the state of Minnesota. That was in 2014. So why are bees important? Bees and all pollinators are important. First, they're part of the balance of nature. They pollinate plants that produce food for us humans and for wild animals and pets. And along with other pollinators, bees give us 1/3 of the food we eat. We can thank them for over 90 different crops grown in the United States alone. And this is good, their pollination services are free. Some facts about bees for those of you who are new to this. Not all bees are black and yellow. Not all bees sting. Not all bees make honey. And there are about 20,000 species of bees worldwide, and honeybees is only one of those species. In Minnesota, there are about 400 different species of bees. This is Heather Holm from Minnetonka, her book called Pollinators of Native Plants. Some of those pictures were from her book. She talks about all the different bees, the native bees, and the different kind of plants that they like. So if you're looking at her garden, this might be a book for you to consider. Also this year, she's coming out with a brand new book about flowers and bees. I showed you what the booklet looks like. That number at the top is the easiest way. You can go to our website and find this paper under resources, or you can go to the League of Women Voters and have to go through a couple other things, or you can go straight to this website, www.lwvmn, League of Women Voters, bees, without a dot in between, straight, and then .org, and get this paper and look at it after tonight if you want to refer to it again. When we first started in this work, we didn't know how to say this word. And so we thought, it's really helpful, was really helpful to kind of figure it out. And we thought we'd share it with you. It's called, if you look at here, say it to yourself. No, say it out loud, okay. Neonicotinoid. Faster, neonicotinoid. So, neonicotinoid. However, if you don't want to say that, you can just say neonics, because that refers to it, and people will know what you're talking about when you're going to the store. Neonicotinoids, I'll be talking about them, and I just want you to know that when you go shopping for plants and you want to make sure that they're neonic-free, that they haven't been treated with neonicotinoids, you won't see the word neonics on the anywhere probably, but you could possibly, see these words. And this is, I'm just going to say them. You don't have to say them, but just so you recognize them and have a vague idea of what they sound like. Imidacloprid, clothianidin, acetamiprid, dinotefurum, thiamethoxam, thiacloprid, nitinpyrum. All of these are neonicotinoids. We'll be talking a little bit more about them. All of those harm bees. Now, people say, so what is happening with bees? Well, there are many factors that are influencing the demise of bees. One is habitat loss. With all of our monocultures, corn, soybeans, and grass, and buildings, they don't have a lot of places to live. And pesticides are a key one. And pesticides are important because there's something that we can do something about. Well, we can also plant more habitat for the bees and other pollinators. And in particular, systemic pesticides. I'll be talking about those. Pathogens. Bees get sick from viruses and diseases, like other living creatures, so they have to deal with that. Parasites. You might have heard of no-see-um or varroa mite. they cause a lot of problems for bees. Poor nutrition. And that means that there's not enough for bees to eat. They're starving. They don't have enough food. That's why it's so important to plant plants that they like. Now, under poor nutrition, too, I think it's kind of interesting to note that it's somewhat ironic that this precious creature that does so much to pollinate our food and the food of other animals is itself does not have enough food, is itself starving, I should say. And then even climate change has an impact because some of those native bees co-evolve with native plants. That means they come up at the same time. And if climate change makes a difference for one of those, either for the animal or for the plant, then they're not going to come up at the same time, and the very food they eat won't be available. Now, evidence suggests that neonicotinoids is a driving factor in bee decline. If we look over at that chart there, I'm going to make sure I don't do it. Down here, the sort of gray line, that shows where there were like, for a long time, beekeepers could do well if they just lost 15% of their hives. That would happen, especially here in Minnesota, during overwintering time. However, in 2006, something interesting happened, and that was that it more than doubled that winter, the loss of bees, bee colonies, I should say. And there's about 30 to 50,000 bees in a colony or a hive, more than doubled. And then another thing happened in 2010. Bees started disappearing not just in the winter, but at different seasons. And if we look at the end of the graph, I think I can't quite see what that's 2014, 2015. Here, the bee loss had more than doubled. I shouldn't say doubled. The loss for during other seasons had grown. It was, and beekeepers were losing up to 50% of their hives in Minnesota. Here it says 42 to 45% there. But in Minnesota, they were losing over 50%, I think it was even 51%. And you know, any business can't survive, I mean, just speaking on the pay of half of the beekeepers, any business can't survive if they're going to lose half of their stock or half of their creatures. So, one of the movies to understand more about the plight of beekeepers is Vanishing of the Bees. It's an award-winning, as you can see, movie. You can get it at the public library. You can rent it on Netflix, or you can buy it on Amazon. And it talks about colony collapse disorder and what's happening with bees and beekeepers. Now, back to the neonicotinoids. They are systemic insecticides. They're powerful neurotoxins. That means they affect the brain. They're developed in the 1980s, but they were introduced in the 1990s. And now they are the most widely used pesticide in the world, and definitely here in Minnesota. What are they used for? They're used for horticulture, fruits, flowers, vegetables, ornamentals. They're used in commodity crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, canola, sugar beets, sunflowers. And people at their homes use insect sprays, soil drenches, tree injections, and different granules containing neonicotinoids. And remember, if you're using one of those things, it won't say this, say neonicotinoids, but it'll have maybe one of those ingredients, or it will say something like systemics. And then urban forestry, tree injections, and soil drenching. Systemic pesticides, what they do when we call it a systemic, that means it affects the entire plant, the roots, the stem, the leaves, the pollen, the nectar, the fruit, even those little moist droplets, those guttation droplets on a plant become poisonous. They're neurotoxic, so they affect the brain and they interfere with the bee's learning, foraging, memory, how to get back to the hive, navigation, reproduction, and immune system functioning. And remember those other items that I listed that affected bees, you know, the varroa mites or poor nutrition or whatever. If they also have this to deal with, it's going to exacerbate the problem of their making it through. They'll be weakened. Exposure, they get exposed through collecting pollen and nectar, drinking contaminated water, seed dust during planting, prolonged exposure through the entire growing season, because that plant is systemic. That means it's in the cellular structure of the plant. It's part of it, and it's there for the whole season. And when it's used with other agrochemicals, for example, certain fungicides, neonics can become 1,000 times more toxic. And I do want to say, when we say toxic too, we mean both lethal and sublethal. Lethal meaning the bee can die immediately. Sublethal meaning the bee gets sick, and then he goes to the next flower and gets sick. And after a while, it kills him. But not, or her, I should say, because those are worker bees I'm talking about. Because it has that in them. He just can't get rid of it, and he's going to be done in eventually. If not immediately, it means just a little later. Now, we talked about the widespread seed, and one of the sheets we have at the back of the room came out just this year, last month, January 2017. It's in the back, and it says, "Help protect pollinators, support farmers." And I'm thinking of two things. One of the things that they're talking about in this paper is the use of seed treatments. Neonics are found on 94, and probably it's up since we did this paper, 94% of corn crops. So this whole section, that's how much corn was used. In the year 2000, it was just the opposite. This was how much corn was, this was how much corn was being treated with anything. And then here, 30% of our soybean crops today are treated with neonicotinoids. Right there. And in the year 2000, less than 5%, that's why I was pointed over to the other one, was used. If anything was used, not neonicotinoids, but of anything. They are applied to about 150 million acres annually. The recent report analysis said that widespread prophylactic, which means preventative, use of these neonicotinoids has negative effect on non-targeted organisms. That means it's going to have a negative effect on all the other pollinators that come by, whether it's and including natural pest control pollinators, such as the bees that, parasitic wasps, that's it, parasitic wasps that help farmers, but they sting other insects that are on the corn or on the different vegetables, and they're a deterrent to take care of the pests. Also, the studies and the research has showed that there are no yield benefits on soybeans using it. In fact, in some cases, it's been found that they're the opposite. They're less cost-effective than alternative methods, and they're, unpredictable as to whether or not they're going to work on the one that's targeted. Some alternatives, you say, well, what can you do if you don't use pesticides? Well, as a matter of fact, there's something called IPM, or Integrated Pest Management. I'm going to just read some of these right here. So that means you'll use biological rather than chemical measures. Prevent pests with crop rotation, and crop rotation improves the health and disrupts host-specific pests. Introduce natural disease-fighting microbes back into the soil so that you have healthy soil. Release those beneficial organisms that hunt down pests and take care of them. And then if you're going to use chemicals with IPM, Integrated Pest Management, you use only chemicals as a last resort and to the particular pest that you have. You don't just have an overall chemical that you put on in there, whether or not you know if you're even going to have pests that year. Now, neonicotinoid seed coatings are a major cause of environmental contamination also, because only 5%, about 5% of the coating actually enters the plant itself. The rest, the other 95%, is scraped, blown off, or sloughed off, or otherwise dispersed into our air, our water, our soil. Neonicotinoids in water are highly soluble. And the USGS, United States Geological Survey, said that 50% of the sampled streams and rivers in the United States were contaminated, and 75% in the Midwest. Of course, we grow a lot of corn and soy here, soybeans. We wonder, how is that affecting our aquifer drinking water sources? There could be serious, but it's unstudied, so we don't know yet. Neonicotinoids in food, since they're absorbed in the vascular system, it's present in many foods that we consume daily. Residues cannot be washed off, like the pesticides of old, and the organic food supply is also at risk because there's drift and water solubility. And I want to just say something about the drift. Drift means that when the seed is being planted, well, probably the best way to tell you about it is to tell a story. Judy and I and Jeff were at a meeting 4 years ago at the state capitol because they were having a hearing. A committee was having a hearing on neonicotinoids. And a farmer, Steve Ellis from Barron, Minnesota, got up and showed us some pictures and told us about what happened to his bees. He's a beekeeper. He's a commercial beekeeper. So he'll be like one of those guys you hear, or people that you hear about in the Vanishing of the Bees movie, if you choose to watch it. He said he had his bees on one side of the road. On the other side of the road, a farmer was planting his corn. He had a pneumatic machine going, so he's planting it. And he noticed, oh, there was some dust rising off it. And then he saw the dust kind of float across the road. And then he saw it go by his hives. And then he saw his hives, the bees, literally drop in front of his eyes. He took out his cell phone, took a picture of it, and was showing it, a video of it, showing them dying in front of his eyes. That was his testimony. Today he was at a pollinator meeting on behalf of the governor's executive order connected with that. And so he's a good advocate for bees. Anyway, that's what that drift is about. Now, why are we still using this, or why is this? Well, let's take a look at the pesticide growth in just 6 years. And this is going to be old information, so all of this will be higher now, but I think this is the year, let's see. Well, I'm going to start here. In the 6 years, the sales of imidacloprid and thiamethoxam, two of those neonicotinoids, grew by 64% and 192%. And then clothianidins, Bayer's successor to imidacloprid, grew by 183%. That's an amazing growth. And if you look at, I'm just not going to go through the whole chart, but if you look at the first one here, imidacloprid, it's used on soybeans as a seed coat, sprayed on tomatoes, and sprayed on leafy greens. It's put out by the Bayer company. That's the same company, Bayer, that makes Bayer aspirin, but they're also into chemicals. And then in this first year, in 2006, their profits, and this says profits in the millions, their profits were $665 million. 6 years later, no, 3 years later. Anyway, in 2009 here, that was 6 years later, because this is 2003. 2009, 6 years later, it was $1.091 billion in profit. And now it's 2017, so it's even later. In, I think it's June of 2014, the WIA, or Worldwide Integrated Assessment, was released. It was from scientists from around the world. 29 scientists did over 800 peer-reviewed studies and came up with a large booklet, which is very technical, but there's also a sheet back there connected with this task force. It's just a little press release talking about what's in it. The last thing that they said in their report was they asked governments around the world to do these things, to reduce the use of and tighten regulations concerning neonicotinoids on a global scale. They said Let's educate farmers regarding alternatives such as IPM and organic practices. That, nowadays, some of that has been lost. We're relying so much on chemicals. And then replace neonicotinoids with principles of prevention and precaution. Research why pesticides have been, been replaced by proven sustainable agricultural practices. So they're asking everyone around the world, much less, the United States, but everyone. Neonicotinoids in the home gardener, that's us. Mostly I'd just say, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the further slides. They're found in retail products and plants, so be sure to ask before you buy. We have a sheet here that says just that, ask before you buy. Do these have neonics in them? Can you guarantee me they're grown without? And on the back of this sheet are plants that the U of M recognizes as plants that bees like here in Minnesota that are grown. It tells you for both native bees and honeybees. It's at the back table back there. What can individual citizens do? Buy clean plants that's free of systemic insecticides, neonic-free, that bees like. Just like us, they don't like everything, and every plant that has a flower. And some plants have less value in them also. Plant a diversity of plants that bloom spring through fall. Makes sense, they have to eat every day. They have to eat through all the seasons. Plant some flowers in clumps or masses. It's much easier for bees and pollinators. Those bees, honeybees and other bees, can wear out their wings flying from flower to flower. So if you have a nice mass together, and when you go shopping for plants, our poor greenhouses, they say people want perfect plants, so we have to use these pesticides. Well, live with some leaf damage. You can bring it back, take off the leaf, and care for it. Tolerate some flowering weeds in your yard. Use IPM practices, integrated pest management practices in your garden. So only use pest chemicals if it's a serious problem, and only for the targeted pest, for the one that's the problem, not just an overall general thing. If you can, stop using pesticides. That means insecticides, fungicides, herbicides. Consider using leaf mulch and organic compost. Ask organic gardeners how they do it. Get the neighborhood child to hand weed your garden, and learn about native plants. Here's a fun picture. Up here, you see turf grass. That's our grass. Nice. Notice the roots. These are native plants. As you can see, one of the things native plants do is, in times of drought, they won't need as much water, because in times of drought, they can get at water. And in times of wetness, they can hold the soil in place and keep moisture retention for, when it's really rainy. Native plants are indigenous. Native plants means plants that are indigenous to our area and thrive in our soil and climate. They usually have long roots. I've just told you that. They'll need weeding when you start them, like any plant, but once they're established, they'll probably require less water and little or no fertilizer. And they feed both honeybees and native bees. And some native bees eat only native plants. Then there's lawns. That's the third largest monoculture in the U.S. after corn and soybeans. Currently, lawns are food deserts. It's just green turf, and there's nothing there for pollinators to eat. If the only time you use your lawn is when you mow it, you don't need it. That's from Ron Bowen Prairie Restorations. So it's time to get a new paradigm out there of what the ideal lawn looks like. There we go. Consider replacing most of your lawn with areas of, native plants. Consider having a small defined border of grass. And if you want grass and think you need it there, consider having maybe some clover and other small flowering plants. But make sure that they don't invade your neighbor's yard. Still want to be a good neighbor. Bees are sounding the alarm, and what can I say? This has been going on for 4 years. It was started in 2013 and then went for 2 years. Then the House of Representatives had it for till 2015, and now it hasn't even been enacted yet. But when it does, please call your U.S. House of Representative person and say, or beforehand, ask the U.S. senators and congressmen when you're talking to them, please, what are you doing to protect pollinators? Start protecting them. That little yellow sheet back there tells you how to talk to some things you can say right now to the legislatures in our House and Senate right now. And tell Minnesota governmental leaders to protect pollinators. And here is just talking about Dave Frederickson from the Department of Ag and Mark Dayton. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We're asking you to speak up because bees urgently need legislation. They need you to call your state senator, your state representative, and even if you just say these two simple phrases, it will help get things going. I'm asking you to limit and track neonicotinoid seed coatings, so limit them, track, and actually, the sheet that we have there in the back says limit, track, and regulate seed coatings, on them. Create a pollinator protection account to help pay for training some of the farmers about different ways of growing things, and also to pay for all the things in the that need education for the public, and for if we're going to do buffers or have different city places so that they can pay for those places to have pollinator-friendly plants. And then we have a third thing here, make more neonic-free seeds available to farmers, because the sad thing is that farmers who even want to plant neonicotinoid seeds are having trouble finding them. So if they can buy organic, but that's pretty expensive. If they want conventional corn seeds, they're having difficulty finding them to purchase. There, we said that. And I think there's... just wanted to point out, this on our website, we have some events and things coming up, but I'm going to come back to this. I want to go to this right here. In August of last year, Governor Dayton came out with a pollinator executive order. This is a big deal. He's saying we need to do something on a state level, and that's why I want you to call on this little yellow sheet. We want you to call there because we need the legislature to make bills that support having seeds for farmers, having money available for a pollinator protection account, limiting and tracking and regulating seed coatings, because right now they've regulated some pesticides, but the seed coating wasn't included because the seed is already coated, so they don't consider it a pesticide somehow. But that's why they need to be asked and say, we want you to do this. And I talked to one of my legislators, and he said, well, Patricia, that's just something Governor Dayton handed down, and I don't think any of the farmers out in the other parts of the state will like that. And I said, wait a minute, that wasn't handed down by Governor Dayton. That was after a 2-year study. This executive order was based on a 2-year study, or longer than 2 years, by the MDA, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. They did a thorough study. We kept thinking it was way too long, that they were dragging their feet because the information was out there. What was taking them so long? This was a long time coming. They made their recommendations, and basically this is about implementing them. And we want you to follow it. They need to hear from you, the citizens, all of us. And you don't have to just call once and think, oh, great. No, you can call once a week. Seriously, the first week you can ask for the first thing on that list. Second week, call for the second. And I've heard recently that when you call, if you could get together 5 to, better yet, 10 other people who understand, you can explain to them what's happening and give them the phrase and the number, and 10 of your neighbors, maybe 5 of your neighbors and 5 of your friends elsewhere from the same city, and call and ask, or the area, if they get 5 to 10 calls on this issue, they're going to say, oh, I better pay attention. And they really don't, some might argue back, some won't, and oftentimes you don't even get a hold of them because they're busy and they have a staff person answer. But leave that message. It will get their attention, and you can make a difference by those phone calls. Whoops. Sorry. Oh, now, to tell you a little bit about the executive summary, Governor Dayton charged the Minnesota Department of Ag to implement recommendations that they put out to implement them. They made these recommendations. Okay, I'm charging you to go back and implement it. He asked the Environmental Quality Board to implement this order by establishing an interagency pollinator protection team. Then he also wanted to create a governor's committee on pollinator protection, and that was of citizens. 15 citizens were chosen after being vetted. They wrote in why they wanted to do it, and I think about 60-some people wrote in, and they've got a large group of people on that committee, and one of those people happens to be Steve Ellis, another one happens to be Marla Spivak of the U of M B-Lab, and another one happens to be Lex Horan of Pesticide Action Network, highly respected people and knowledgeable of what's happening here. So create a governor's committee on pollinator protection to advise the governor, the Environmental Quality Board, the Interagency Pollinator Protection Team, and other agencies. And then the Department of Natural Resources to develop an integrated pest management strategy. There's that IPM, using only chemicals as a last resort to minimize pesticide use on public lands. And then there were 8 points. The fifth one was the Board of Water and Soil Resources was to direct work to restore and improve quality pollinator habitat, which they need so desperately. And the Department of Transportation to protect, and enhance pollinator habitat on state-owned transportation properties. And then the last one there, 7. Commissioner of Pollution Control Agency to manage landfills to create and protect and enhance pollinator habitat, and also to protect our water, I think. And the Commissioner of Administration that manages capital lands to support pollinator health by planting pollinator-friendly plants. And he's just in the process of learning about native plants. And some of you might even be able to help him with some ideas. And this is some of us at the meeting. After it was announced in August, we met with the governor and thanked him and there's the Department of Ag, Commissioner Frederickson, saying a big thank you to them. And so you don't have to do everything at once, but I'm going to ask you to do something at once. Choose one of the ideas that you had tonight, and I am going to share something else from a couple things from the table. But choose one thing to do tomorrow so you don't forget about it or put on the shelf like I'll do it later. Maybe make a phone call. Maybe tell a friend about something. Well, I won't go through that. You can decide. Up here for you to look at, there is the state of it. Here's the executive order. Those 8 points I told you about, they're right in these 2 pages. They're online on our website. And this is a picture of our website. I had it back. I won't go find it. And among other things, up here at the top, it says resources. So you'll find that on there. You'll also find under resources, if you're thinking about going to your city and you want a resolution passed in your city, we have 2 sheets back there about that. One is a model resolution. A group of us got together and said, if we had the ideal resolution, what might it look like? And it's a living document because it's going to change. And it also has to fit with what your city wants to do. Anyway, it has 2 pages. I'm just going to take this out. The resolution is here. First, it says all the whereases. Whereas, and that means because of this, that's all whereas means. And then down here it says, therefore, be it resolved. And so, because of these things above, therefore, please do these next 6 things. And basically, the 6 things are, you're going to take immediate steps to stop using systemic insecticides on all city property and maybe even all pesticides. Imagine that. And then you fill in the blank of the city, shall increase clean forage in the city, so you plant flowers that bees like, basically. And the next part says the city or community or township keep learning about organic methods and encourage management on city property of organic methods. And this will also be good for the health of the children who play in the parks, of course. And take immediate steps to begin learning about IPM, integrated pest management, and managing the area that the city controls in that way. And then it's got a kind of a defined, this is long, so I'm not going to go through it. And then do a yearly report to citizens to tell how things went last year. And then send copies to these different groups, to the governor so he knows you're doing it, that you passed this resolution, or to the Department of Ag to say that, yeah, we think this is important. That's what's on the resolution. So it's not really hard stuff, but it's important stuff that will make a difference for our pollinators and our food system. And then attached to it is the summary of the task force that those scientists did, their summary about the worldwide integrated assessment. It's much easier to read, and it's much shorter. It's only a page and a half. So it kind of backs up what we're saying up here. And then this sheet about who. Oh, so that's the, yeah, I guess that's it. That's the model resolution. And then oh, here it is. I also have a sheet here on, we did this in Shorewood. 2013, we thought there was a problem. We got aware of the problem. And then that January 12th, we met for our first time. And in February, we got in a meeting with the mayor, talked with him, and he called and said, oh, we thought, well, maybe March or April we'll be ready to have a resolution together. And he called back and said, I hate to do this. I know you mentioned it just the other day, but we can put you in on, 2 weeks from now at the end of February. So we said, great, we'll take it. And then we scrambled and did our homework and worked really hard, presented the resolution to the council, and they unanimously passed it in July, because we had a lot of things we had to go back for and explain. We were new at it. You don't have to be perfect. You just speak from your heart and give them correct information and then work with them. And this tells, getting a resolution passed, how we did it. You can too. And this is way detailed about it. It tells you every little thing practically that we did. But you can do this. And it doesn't have to be this exact resolution. Just even making people aware of it helps. So that's a starting point. Then on our events section, we have some wonderful things coming up. One is, well, I'll tell you, people are looking for native plants a lot. We have a list of different places you can go for native plants. A good place, one that will be coming up on Mother's Day weekend, is the Friends Plant Sale. Another one, a company you can go to, is Glacial Ridge. But there's also a Wild Ones Conference. This man who's written about native plants, and he's very concerned about native pollinators, like Heather Holm is, bringing nature home. He will be talking about native plants and pollinators at a Wild Ones Conference, and that's in a short time. That's 18th of February. Then in March, there's another event. March 9th, there's an event for cities and council people, and that's filling up March 9th. That's going to be over in St. Paul. And then in April, Beyond Pesticides they chose Minneapolis for their 35th annual conference on pesticides. And that's going to be at the Humphrey Institute. All of these, so one a month, they're all coming up. And you can either tell someone about it or come and join it and go to it yourselves. And then let's see. They're not listed in all the literature, but it's on our website. And if you go to hummingforbees.org, www.hummingforbees.org, go to events, you'll find it. This is the catalog that they have in the Friends Plant Sale. Choose something. There's so much needs to be done, and so it's so exciting to see you all here. And now we're ready for questions and comments. So, and I know there was someone here who was going to start out. There was, oh, yes. You were going to share some. Did you? Was there something you wanted to share that's coming up? You asked or mentioned.
I was just going to ask about what are the things that people are important to ask us to remind us about providing water for our
Sure. Oftentimes we've had, you get a little pie plate, put rocks in it, and then clean water. During times of drought, bees get thirsty. They'll go to swimming pools. They'll go to places where maybe somebody has all kinds of sprayed stuff on their lawns and there's puddles there, and they'll drink from that and get sick. They need to drink just like they need to eat. And so please, consider putting out a dish in your garden. Or if you have a bird bath, be sure and put some rocks in it, because we don't want them getting in there and drowning. The rocks are so they have a place to land on. And the same, it's good for the butterflies. And if you've ever been canoeing, you know you get a dragonfly you might pull out of the water sometimes because they're drowning. So, thank you. You had a question, sir.
Just a comment. There's a petition going around the internet. I don't know when it started. To the EPA about this.
Excellent. Anytime you see those, if they're supportive, I would certainly consider taking the time to sign them and tell them. In fact, you can also call the EPA and say so. Any other questions? Judy, yes.
I'd like to add something to
Please do.
your very comprehensive presentation here. There is a connection to other wildlife and birds, and that is because when we, like Tricia mentioned, the dust and the plants leach the nutrients into the soil, and it goes into the wetlands, so that accumulates, and it kills off the microinvertebrates. And of course, you understand from your human biology that there's a food chain, and it goes on up and kills off all the food that birds live on, who live in wetland areas. And also, the coated seeds themselves, if a bird happens to eat that, they will be killed outright from that. That's how toxic these are.
Okay. Yes, sir. Oh.
And I wanted to say, just that when you're at the City of Duluth at the seed library, where you can check out seeds at the beginning of the spring and then plant the crop. And you bring back the seed in the fall and you describe the conditions that you grew it in. And so there's kind of a running out of the history of the food and I think that's a good strategy. And you can't buy these plants that are on the list. It's hard to buy them without being custom. So it'd be great if we had some sort of local seed library where we could all share seeds from our favorite plants
Oh, neat.
to develop our own field. And I would be happy, I'll wait here for 5 to 10 minutes after we're done. If anyone wants to credit conversation. And we still at Suleiman, I think that's here.
Thank you. What a great idea. Yes. These slides aren't, but the slides that these are, all the ones in here, and so from the bee briefing paper, you can get some of those pictures. The information is there, this paper's there, plus a slideshow without, we just made 3 of the slides today also. We added on the action works part. Oh, wow. Please. This January issue is back on the table. If you take an extra one for him, that would be great. And if you want to talk to Jeff and Judy about anything else back there that they think would be good for you to take, that would be wonderful. And then do those asks. You don't want to give him that little yellow sheet necessarily. In fact, please don't. But ask him for at least one of those things. And yeah, and if you need any they'll maybe give you a phone number if you need to talk further with someone about that before you meet with them. Yes, sir.
You're talking about how honeybees are in trouble.
Oh, and native bees, honeybees, native bees, butterflies, all pollinators. We started out because we learned about bees and we learned about the demise of bees. But in this process, we feel that anytime anyone passes like our Be Safe resolution, that's affecting and helping all pollinators. And we now say bee and pollinator safe. We don't say that on our signs because it's too easy to have that little yellow sign that's catchy and gets people's attention. We didn't want to redesign that, but no, it's all pollinators that this aids. In fact, as Judy mentioned, too, all that other wildlife. I mean, have you noticed a decline in maybe how many birds you've seen? Have you noticed for older people here, we know that when we go driving in the country or driving to visit friends or whatever in the summertime, we do not have to clean our windshield like we used to do. We used to have to get out of the car on a regular basis and go to a gas station, suds it up, and then scrape hard because there were so many insects on there. We are losing that. And if the insects go, whoa, think of all the birds. Think of more of the bats. I mean, this is affecting a lot of life. Yeah. Other question? Yes. No? You know, I don't believe that Miracle Grow has a systemic insecticide in it. I don't think so. No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't, actually. However, I'm not sure about how it affects, critters. We're encouraging people to use, leaf mulch, organic fertilizers. If you get manure and tame it down so it doesn't burn your plants, that kind of thing. That's what we're encouraging. Yes. I don't know. What do you think? Yes?
Well, one of the things I was taught was that please leave your dandelions growing because they're an early food source for pollinators. Well, I don't know, but at least dandelions are one of the early food sources, one of the early food sources.
Have you seen them? Not even dandelions or clover or creeping Charlie. Judy.
They're meant to flower in trees because it's
That's right.
times it's
Pussy willows.
really warm, and the bees come out. One of them might think that these might be way up high. Not the ones that ornamentals, but sometimes most people don't even notice. It comes up really. So, I mean, it could be a problem with this crazy levels we're having.
One of the nice things on the sheet is pussy willows. Pussy willows come out, and they're one of the ones that come out early. And if you have that there, there's pollen that the bees go for on that. Yes, somebody said something about bee bread over here. My understanding that bee bread is made out of both nectar and pollen, that the honeybee, not the bumblebee, which is a solitary bee, I believe, part solitary and part, well, it's very independent. But anyway, what it does is a colony bee. It takes pollen, collects pollen and nectar, makes it into a ball, then lays an egg on it, and then goes out and then puts a covering over if it's in the stem, and then comes back, makes another bee, little thing of bee bread, puts it in the stem, and these are some of Heather Holmes' pictures. Here it is. some of the, so there's the bee bread right in there with an egg on it. There's another one, another one, another one, another one. And it's so interesting. I was wondering when I first saw this, what happens if this one hatches first? Actually, how it works is they hatch in order. How that works, I don't know. But and that honeybee, the bumblebee, pardon me, starts a brand new colony all by herself, starting that way, laying eggs. She makes it through the winter and then comes out in the early spring, and we know how precious they are and how much we love our tomatoes. And bumblebees are especially strong at opening the flowers that go with tomatoes and pollinating them. They're the best pollinators for that. Any other questions? Yes. You know, I can't say with scientific certainty. I don't know. I haven't studied it. But I have some questions about it, and I've even heard people say off the cuff that they didn't know if it did any good. I mean, it makes people feel good because, like, they're going to do it, but they don't know if it's doing any good and if it's just killing all the life in the water. And, you know, so I'm not real fond of it myself.
Well, it is an insecticide.
Mm-hmm.
Everything
Goes by.
that all these
Also, I think that around our wetland, what they do is they drop pellets in, so it isn't a spray. So that part doesn't happen. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it actually says on it that it is a blood effect, and it actually is beneficial for those plants. It put us in
It's kind of tricky in our world today. Anything else? Thank you very much for your time, and go help these. Feel free to come up and look at anything here, take anything back there, and if you have any questions or...
I hope that you've all been buzzed a little and will work to be informed and to inform others, and then get a bee in your bonnet to team up with others to promote bee-friendly activities. So again, please join me in thanking Patricia for coming out tonight. It's been most wonderful. Now, Lois wants to tell you about, this has been recorded for cable, so she's going to tell you a little bit about when.
I really don't know when, because they couldn't tell me, because they didn't know how long this was going to last. So you can watch it online at any time, but Northwest Community Television, or as it's now known, Connected Community Experience, they will be letting, if you watch that, Channel 12, you will be able to find out, and they'll tell on that channel when it will be rebroadcast, so you can tell your friends that weren't able to be here tonight, or maybe you want to watch it again yourself. There was really an awful lot of information to digest in just 1 hour here, but watch and you will be able to find out when it will be rebroadcast. Thank you all for coming.